I still remember how that spring felt. The days were longer, the evenings warm and soft, and everything seemed a little more alive. My name's Kennedy Littledike, and back then, I thought I had everything figured out, or at least enough to be happy. I was 18, just out of high school, working part-time at a local coffee shop while I tried to figure out what to do next. I lived for the simple things, driving with the windows down, singing along to songs I half knew the words to, late-night runs to the gas station with my friends for slushies. There was always laughter, always something to look forward to. I guess you could say I was a hopeful kind of person. I believed in good mornings and even better nights. I believed that if you worked hard and loved hard, the world would give you something back. And most days it felt like it did. My boyfriend, I thought he was the one. He had a smile that could light up any room, and I used to think he was my whole world. We'd spend hours talking about everything and nothing, dreaming about all the places we'd go together one day. I thought I knew him better than anyone. Looking back, maybe I just wanted to believe that. The day I found out he was seeing someone else, it felt like the ground dropped out from under me. You think you're safe, that the life you're building is real and solid, and then, just like that, it's gone. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like my heart was stuck somewhere between disbelief and heartbreak. That night, I didn't want to be alone. I called a couple of friends, told them I needed to get out, to clear my head. They didn't even ask questions. They just said, "Where do you want to go?" And I knew exactly where. The mountain near our town, the one that always looked so beautiful at sunset. It felt like the kind of place where you could leave your pain behind, even if just for a little while. So we packed into my car, a beat-up old sedan that had seen better days, and headed up the winding roads as the sky turned gold and pink. I remember the music playing low on the speakers, the windows cracked open to let in the cool evening air. I remember thinking that maybe this was exactly what I needed, a little bit of beauty to remind me that the world was still out there, even if my heart was in pieces. I didn't know then how quickly everything could change, how one moment of peace could turn into a nightmare. But that night, with the sun setting behind the mountains and my friends beside me, I felt like maybe I'd be okay. I just didn't know what was waiting for me on the way back down. The road up the mountain was narrow and winding, a single-lane strip that always made me feel a little bit nervous. But that night, it was like we were on a mission to find something bigger than ourselves. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the asphalt, and everything felt touched by gold. I remember the way my friends were trying to cheer me up, telling stupid jokes and playing our favorite songs. They were the kind of friends who didn't need you to say much. They just knew how to be there in the small ways that matter most. I tried to laugh along, but it was hard. My thoughts kept drifting back to what I'd lost. We reached the top just as the sun was starting to slip below the horizon. It was breathtaking, all those colors, like someone had spilled paint across the sky. We parked the car and sat on the hood, legs dangling over the edge, watching the day fade away. For a few minutes, it felt like the world was quiet again. I closed my eyes and let the breeze wash over me, felt the sting of the cool air on my cheeks. My heart was still heavy, but I tried to push it down, to focus on that moment. To believe that maybe things would be okay, even if they didn't feel like it. Eventually, the sun disappeared completely, and the air turned cold. My friend said it was time to head back. It was getting late, and the mountain wasn't a place you wanted to be after dark. I didn't argue. I just climbed back into the driver's seat, turned the key, and felt the old car rumble to life. The drive down was steep and sharp, each turn tighter than the last. My hands were tight on the wheel, my mind drifting with every bend. I don't remember what we were talking about. I don't even remember if there was music playing. I just remember the feeling, that sick, weightless drop in my stomach as the car suddenly jolted. I must have taken the turn too fast. 1 second we were hugging the curve, and the next we were off the road, the tires slipping on the loose gravel. I heard my friend scream, felt the car lurch and twist beneath us. Time slowed down in that awful way it does when everything is falling apart. I don't remember the impact. I don't remember the way the world flipped upside down or the sound of metal tearing apart. All I remember is the sudden silence afterward, the way it felt like the world had stopped breathing, and I was caught in the space between. When I came to, it was like waking up from a nightmare you can't quite remember. Everything hurt, my head was ringing, and there was blood in my mouth. I tried to open my eyes, but the world was a blur of lights and shadows. I could hear my friends calling out, voices sharp with panic, but I couldn't move. I felt like I was floating, weightless and dizzy. Then I realized I wasn't on the ground. I was suspended in the air, held up by something I couldn't see. It took a moment for me to understand. I'd been thrown from the car, and somehow I'd landed on the power lines. My whole body was trembling with adrenaline, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might burst. I looked down and saw the ground far below, too far. My mind couldn't make sense of it. 9 meters. That's what they told me later. 3 stories high, hanging there in the dark. My fingers were numb, gripping at nothing, and I could feel the cold metal of the wires beneath my back. For a moment, I thought I was going to die. The wires buzzed with energy, and I could smell the faint, sharp tang of ozone in the air. I didn't know how I was still alive, how the electricity hadn't surged through me and ended everything right there. But it hadn't. Somehow I was still breathing. The worst part was the waiting. I could hear my friends screaming below, but I couldn't see them. I couldn't see anything except the stars above me and the black shapes of the trees swaying in the wind. My mind was racing, skipping from thought to thought. How had this happened? Why was I here? Would I ever feel the ground beneath my feet again? Every second felt like an hour. My arms ached from trying to hold on to the wires, but I didn't dare let go. I knew that if I slipped, there would be nothing to catch me. The world was silent except for the crackle of the lines and the ragged sound of my own breathing. At some point, I started to pray. Not for a miracle, not really, just for the strength to keep holding on. I didn't want to die up there. I didn't want my last memory to be the darkness and the cold. I don't know how long I hung there, but it felt like forever. My arms were shaking so badly I thought they'd give out at any second. My whole body was screaming with pain, but I kept thinking, just hold on. Just a little longer. Then finally I saw the flashing lights below. Red and blue cutting through the dark. I heard the voices of the rescuers calling up to me, telling me to stay calm, that help was coming. It was the first time since the crash that I felt like maybe, just maybe, I might survive this. They moved quickly, setting up ladders and harnesses, ropes that glinted in the glow of the floodlights. I could see their breath in the cold air, their faces set in lines of focus. They were professionals, and I could see it in the way they moved, steady, sure, like they'd done this 100 times before. One of them climbed up slowly, his voice calm and steady as he talked to me. "You're doing great," he said. "Just a little longer." I nodded, even though my arms felt like they might snap in two. My hands were numb and my head was swimming, but I held on to his voice like it was the only thing keeping me alive. I remembered the feel of the harness as they clipped it around me, the way the rope dug into my ribs. It hurt, but it was a good kind of hurt. It meant I was going to be okay. The rescuer told me to let go when he counted to 3, and when I did, he caught me in the harness and started lowering me down. The descent was slow, every second stretching out like an eternity. My head was spinning, but I could see the ground coming closer, the shapes of my friends and the flashing lights of the fire trucks. When my feet finally touched the earth again, I thought I might collapse from relief. The paramedics were there in an instant, wrapping me in blankets, checking my pulse, asking me questions I could barely hear. My body was shaking so hard I could hardly speak, but all I could think was, I'm alive. I'm still here. They loaded me into the back of an ambulance, and as the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of the power lines overhead, the place where I'd been trapped, the place I thought would be my grave. And I thought, not tonight. Not this time. The hospital was a blur of white walls and soft beeping sounds. I remember the bright lights overhead, the smell of antiseptic that never seemed to go away. My mind felt foggy like I was underwater. I'd drift in and out, catching pieces of conversations I couldn't quite hold onto. They told me later I was in and out of consciousness for days. My body was broken in so many ways I couldn't even wrap my mind around it. 21 surgeries, they said. 21 times they had to cut me open to fix what had been shattered. I remember waking up with tubes in my nose, my mouth dry and cracked, my whole body aching. And then there was the leg, or the place where my leg had been. I remember the moment I realized it was gone. There was a bandage where it should have been, and I could feel the empty space like a phantom, a weight that would never be there again. I cried when they told me. I'm not ashamed of it. I cried for everything I thought I'd lost, my leg, my old life, the way things used to be. But somewhere in that grief, there was something else too, relief. Relief that I was still alive, even if it didn't feel like it in that moment. The days in the hospital stretched on, each one blending into the next. My friends visited when they could, their faces pale and worried. My family was there too, holding my hand, telling me I was strong. I didn't feel strong, not at first. I felt like someone else, someone smaller and more fragile than I'd ever known. But as the days turned into weeks, I started to see the smallest signs of progress. The first time I sat up without feeling like the world was going to spin away from me. The first time I could breathe without it hurting. The first time I looked in the mirror and didn't see a victim, but a survivor. Rehabilitation was its own kind of battle. Learning to move again, to trust my body when it felt like a stranger. There were days I wanted to give up, days when the pain was so bad I thought I'd never walk again. But I kept going. I kept fighting. When I finally left the hospital, it felt like stepping into a new world. Everything looked the same, the sky, the trees, the road I'd driven 1,000 times, but I felt different. It was like the accident had torn away everything I thought I knew about myself, and now I was trying to figure out what was left. The hardest part wasn't the pain or even learning how to move with just one leg. It was the feeling that I wasn't the same person I'd been before. But over time, I started to see that maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. I started physical therapy, pushing my body in ways I didn't think were possible. There were days I fell, days I wanted to give up. But every time I stood up again, I felt a little stronger, a little braver. My friends and family cheered me on, but the real battle was inside me, learning to believe in myself again. I got a prosthetic leg, and it was like learning to walk all over again. Step by shaky step, I found my balance. And with every step, I felt like I was taking back a little piece of who I was and who I was going to be. I've come to see that survival isn't just about living through the accident. It's about what you do after, how you choose to keep going, even when everything feels broken. I've learned that it's okay to be scared, to grieve what you've lost. But it's also okay to find joy in the small things again, the laughter of friends, the warmth of the sun on your face, the quiet pride of standing on your own 2 feet, even if one of them is made of metal. I don't know if I'll ever stop thinking about that night, about the crash, the hours hanging in the dark, the surgeries and the pain. But I also know that those memories don't define me. They're just part of the story. And I'm still here to keep writing the rest. When I look in the mirror now, I don't see the girl who fell that night. I see the woman who got back up. And that's enough for me.